South Africa eased a victory over Scotland in the first major clash in the pool of death. My name's Mark, let's talk rugby. Early on in this one, South Africa are pinning Scotland in their own half. We have some big carries from the likes of Etzebeth, Pieter-Steph du Toit and Kitshoff. Then we have the first scrum of the game. Scotland are pretty solid, but as they try to run it, South Africa just being very aggressive at the breakdown. Visa was a real menace there just the whole game. The guy was, had a great game, I thought. Kitshoff then gets pinged for offside and Scotland have a chance to get into South Africa territory, but it's basically brief respite from them as South Africa win a scrum in the Scotland half. South Africa then win a penalty as Schoeman goes to ground under pressure from Malherbe. Lebok takes every second allowed to him for the shot at goal, but actually drags it across the posts and missed. Didn't have a great game today from the tee. We've seen it with him in the past that there's no doubt he's a good kicker from the tee. You don't get to be the URC's top point scorer 2 seasons in a row if you have major problems with your kicking game. It just seems that when the pressure is coming on at the top level, there's some kind of mental thing going on and he's just not producing his best. But from here then, South Africa come on the attack again. Some very aggressive defence from Scotland this time, but then Russell gets pinged for a deliberate knock-on. Lebok has another chance from the tee, and this time he slots it 3-0 South Africa ahead. Scotland then with another chance to attack from a line-out on the edge of the 22, but they throw it over Richie at the tail. And you could see by the jump and the way it went that they absolutely did not mean to overthrow that. And, the line-out was poor for most of the game as well. South Africa kicked the ball downfield, looked to counter, but Kinghorn, I thought, did well to, get some decent distance on his clearance so that there wasn't really a net gain for South Africa there. Richie then plays du Toit in the line-out and South Africa get a penalty. They can kick that back into the Scotland 22 and Scotland really not doing themselves any favours at this stage. They had the chance to put South Africa under a bit of pressure in their own half defensively, but they then, to do something like that and to come from the captain as well, was a bit disappointing. Then Mostert, he takes it at the front, but then Dialende knocks on as they look to run it. So, it's not just Scotland who are misfiring, South Africa as well, not quite getting their passes to hand. We then have some handbags shortly after that. Dialende was bundled into touch, I think himself and Ben White. So 2 of them get a talking to from the referee. But, it was just a very intense affair, I think, and something like that had to bubble up. You see it often when, top teams clash and it's very close. From here then, Colby, I thought, did well to tackle, Tuipulotu, and then Marks manages to get over the ball to win a penalty. We then get a camera shot of Felix Jones. He's holding up a yellow light in the coach's box and it's some kind of signal obviously to tell him to kick for the posts. Lebok obliges and makes it 6-0. I'm sure there's going to be some asshole in some rugby press somewhere who will say holding up the light and stuff shouldn't be allowed and etc. But for me it doesn't matter. The Boks are always on the edge of everything, and they're things like this. They're always the innovators, and other teams rather than maybe come and complain about them, just do the same thing. If you think you're getting advantage from that, then you do the same thing. It's not against the rules, and again, I don't think you'll get many head coaches complaining about it themselves, but you will get, I think, some rugby press complaining about it. But for me, it's a clever idea. Well done to them. That's all you can say. But 6-0 to South Africa at this stage. Scotland then, they're not really in the game, but it's still only 6 points. And, it's not a great return for South Africa's dominance in the game so far. South Africa then, they lose Etzebeth. He was replaced by Snyman. Snyman is a fantastic, player, but Etzebeth is just so talismanic to South Africa. And, to lose him for this game didn't really matter in the end, but if they lose him for the rest of the World Cup, that would be a huge blow to them. But they do have... They're just stacked with quality in that second row as well. But it is, if Etzebeth is fit, it's about who partners him, not about competition for his place. I think that's how good he is. And no slight on the other second rows that are in that squad, because I think a lot of them, would be pushing to start in, other nations' first 15. So it's just, Etzebeth is, I think, in terms of his generation, is just one of the best, if not the best, second row of his generation. Scotland then, they win a free kick at a scrum inside the South Africa 22. They go quickly and get it out to Darcy Graham on the wing. He jinks a little bit, but, can't really get over. Then Scotland are slowly driven back away from, they were maybe about 5 metres out from the try line, but as they kind of move it, they get driven back. South Africa then knock it on, going for an intercept, and referee says it's not deliberate. Finn Russell, he's kind of bent over, he's holding his midriff at this stage, and a little bit worried about him, because talking about South Africa losing Etzebeth, if Scotland lost Finn Russell, that would be an even bigger blow to them. We then have a TMO review that shows a clash between him and Arendse, and basically it was a no arms tackle by Russell, and that's apparently where he got hurt. So it's just a penalty to South Africa. Russell ends up finishing the game, so he was fine after that. Took a few knocks, but I think most 10s these days expect to get a few knocks during the game, and if they can finish it out, they're going to count that as a good one. Then Russell almost kicks a peach of a 50-22, but Colby does really well to keep the ball in play. Scotland then open up South Africa for really the first time in the game. Graham breaks into space, and he's got Van der Merwe on the outside of him, and I think there's another player out there as well, but he delays the pass, decides to take the contact, and momentum is just completely lost. Should have given the pass there, and we didn't see Graham all that much in the game, and it's just a pity that something good is followed by something bad there. South Africa then decide to go to their maul. They're getting forward, and then they go again, but Scotland managed to get in there and disrupt. They make the ball unplayable, and it was really good maul defence from Scotland there. I felt like that they handled the South African maul, well at the points where South Africa tried to go to it. Scotland then win a scrum penalty, and there's just pats on the back all around. They just needed something to G them up, and it felt like maybe that would be it. They then win another penalty on a South African feed to a scrum on the stroke of half time, and Russell makes it 6-3 at the break. We then have, at half time, in analysis, at least on the feed I was watching, you have some replays of that basically suggested that Creel was very lucky that his tackle on Dempsey, where there was head-on-head contact, wasn't looked at further in that first half, because he absolutely could have seen a card, and it could have been that the bunker deemed it to be red as well. So he was a lucky boy there. But I'm sure, if you go comb through the rest of the game, you probably find, a number of instances like that for both teams as well. But this is one that, when the ones where the TV can pull it very quickly like that at halftime, then you wonder if the officials could have seen it as well. But, no slight really on the officials, because as I said before in other videos, you can't have the officials looking at every single point in the game, but stuff like this will always cause debate as well. But from here then into the second half, South Africa win a penalty at the scrum. We then have more lights from the coach's box, and the box point to the post. Lebok misses the kick, and it's still a 3-point game. South Africa then retain the ball and they come back at Scotland. Arendse gets to within a few meters. There was a lovely offload from Snyman as well in the build-up there. Scotland then scramble well though, and Kinghorn, his intervention prevents a try, but it is a scrum to South Africa about 10 meters out. They go through the phases, edging closer and closer to the line, and then Peter Steptoe goes over to score. Lebok then drags the conversion wide, and it's 11-3. Scotland then, they're on the attack round about halfway, but get turned over. A couple of phases later then, Lebok puts in like just a pinpoint kick to Arendse out on the right wing. He collects it, goes over to score. It really was, a great kick from Lebok there. De Klerk then takes over the kicking duties and nails the touchline conversion. It's 18-3. And, here I'm thinking there's very few teams in the world that can actually turn over this deficit. And honestly, as an Irish fan, I wouldn't include Ireland in that. Maybe Ireland do have it in them. I just haven't seen it before. Ireland's seem to be the kind of team that they get momentum and that's how they beat a team. Like they pull away. They generally don't come back. Now, in fairness, they generally don't put themselves in a position to come back. But having said all that, as I said, there's very few teams in the world that could actually come back, but Scotland are definitely one of those. We've seen them come back time and time again from this kind of deficit. So there's always hope there for Scotland. And, it must be, heartening for a Scotland fan to think that even when you're that far behind, there's still a chance, because a lot of other teams would think, our fans would think that's the game gone for us. But from here then, we've got replacement props on both sides, and now South Africa are taking control in the scrum. They win a kickable penalty. De Klerk puts the penalty just wide of the post. Russell then kicks an absolute beaut of a 50-22. Scotland go quickly and they think they scored, but there's a couple of things wrong with the play. First of all, it's ahead of the mark, and second, it's a different ball, so you can't go quickly. Other than, we had that try that Wales scored against Ireland at the Millennium Stadium a few years ago, where they did use a different ball. But generally, you are not allowed to use a different ball. It's just it was missed on that occasion. But from here then, Faf de Klerk. I missed my point there. South Africa, then their defence managed to slowly march Scotland back as they look to attack from the line out. Like they go from maybe about 10 metres out to the edge of the 22. Then Khaleesi gets in there and wins a penalty. Ayakane then, he's offside, so Russell kicks a penalty up the line into the 22. Feel like Scotland, they need to produce something soon, because even for a team that can score as quickly as they can, they're running out of time. The line-out though goes awry, and luckily for them, Peter Steptoe does knock it on as South Africa look to run it out. So Scotland get another chance with a scrum just outside the 22, but then South Africa win a penalty at the scrum, and you feel like that's a chance gone at that stage. Scotland, as I said, they run out of time, but it's South Africa who are creating the chances. Colby with a great break gets him into the 22. Lovely step and run from him. Van der Merwe then marks a chip over the top and, saves Scotland from conceding again. But at this stage, you would really want to see him on the ball in the opposition 22 while not so close to his own line. Then Scotland do make it up into the South African 22 again, but Grant Williams makes a break, and 60 meters down the field, the guy is just electric, and he's got so much pace, weaving in and out players. And then Finn Russell with like the try saver tap tackle just about gets to him and taps his ankle to put him on his face. And other than that, I think Williams would have scored possibly the try of the tournament there. From that then, we have Scotland. They get a penalty in the last minute. They go up the line into 22, but then as they're kind of moving in the line out, they infringe and they give away a free kick. South Africa tap it and kick it out, and that's it. Full time 18-3. Comfortable win for the Springboks. I thought the Springboks were excellent. We didn't see too much razzle dazzle for them, but in terms of, we saw sparks from like Aaron Colby, Williams, but it was mainly, the forwards really won that. Their line out was great. Their speed off the mark in defence was excellent, competing at the breakdown. The scrum in the second half, just denied Scotland any chance to come back into the game there as well. I thought Visa was excellent in the back row, Khaleesi as well, Steph Dutoy, all of these guys gelling together as a unit was great to see. I thought the initial front row, wasn't as good as the guys who came on, which, I gave them the billing as before the game as the best front row in World Rugby at the moment. But then the replacements come on, and I gave them the billing of the best replacement front row in the world. So they kind of pulled me out of the fire there on that one. But, Lebok, I thought he had a great game at 10, other than his kicking from the tee. And, that's something, again, it's just the mental side of the thing, because he has the technique to kick these kicks, and that's something that they're going to have to work on with him, I feel, if they're going to go on and retain this title. But from Scotland then, line out misfired, scrum went backwards in the second half, did no real platform due to South Africa's excellent, and then that South African hard press in defence as well meant that it was so hard for them to spread the ball as well the way they like to. And I tweeted as well during the game that the way the game kind of worked out, if it felt like it was almost tailor-made for Ben Healy at 10 rather than Russell, because I felt like Healy, with the way South Africa were defending, he would have been playing more of a territory game and kicking in behind them. He's got an absolutely massive boot as well. I think it would have meant that Scotland would play more in the right parts of the fields. But I also mentioned that, would I pick Healy to start over Russell? Absolutely not, because Russell just gives you so much more in his game. And when you're at that point where you're 15 points down, Russell is the man who is potentially going to spark it so that you can get 2 or 3 tries in like a 5 or 10 minute period. And, that's why you have Russell out there. You have to take the good with the bad. But it was just kind of on the way the game was going. It felt like that kind of game where you needed more of a game management type 10 rather than a flash 10 there. But still, like Russell, again, he just gives you so much more than that. But now from here, South Africa, they're pretty much through to the quarterfinal now, unless something weird happens with bonus points and stuff like that. Scotland now, that game against Ireland is basically their knockout game. They've obviously still got to get through their other games in the pool as well, but that's the one they're going to target, because that will be the one that will ultimately decide whether they go home or they can progress onto the quarterfinals.